Mr. Saldana, the man, the myth, the legend himself.
Yeah, right.
Welcome. Good morning. How are you?
Doing good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I'm talking to you on this fine Thursday morning. So, for those of you that don't know Alex, he is a flipper extraordinaire, runs a bunch of crews, flips on his own, flips with partners, flips for people. Quite an amazing agent, what I would consider the top 1% or the top 10%. The top agent class of all the agents I know in the Denver, Colorado area. And he's got a deal for me, and he's gracing me with his presence this morning.
Get out of here.
Let's rock and roll, dude. What you got?
Yeah, buddy. Well, you're too nice. Thank you for having me, though. All we can do is do what we do well and hope that it helps people at the end of the day, right? And
That's
so
right.
I've come across, something that normally, and you've been trying to change my mindset on this for years now, and you'll do it eventually, right? I see flips. That's what I see. The numbers I see are flips. I come to you with deals, and you're like, dude, you're crazy for selling this thing. What the hell are you doing? Because that's all I see. That's all I've been trained to see. And I've got one here that it can be a flip, but they're always going to be ugly rental units. Is the thing at the end of the day. So I'm running rental numbers on this, and what's got me hung up is, it's a 3-package sort of deal that I'm trying to put together here. But the one here in Denver Metro, easy. I got the numbers, no problem, I think, right? But then there's one in Sterling and one in Cheyenne, right? So now you start talking like GRNs are different, what cap rates people expect. Like, are these the 1-to-1 ratio markets that we don't see in Denver because we're expecting 6% appreciation on our numbers? So that's what's got me hung up a little bit is like, all right, what is exactly rental ready in Sterling versus Denver, right?
Yeah.
And what does this mean rental rate wise? I've reached out to a couple of people. I've had one buddy who helped me out a little bit in Sterling to kind of re-solidify some numbers out there. The one in Cheyenne is still a little bit of a stranger, but this is what we got. We can start with the one in the Denver area. It's Wheat Ridge. It's a duplex, but it's not a duplex. It's a single family zoning, but it has totally been separated. It's right on Kipling. Like, it is Kipling and 36th-ish area. Like,
Okay.
this thing is never going to be anything. Potentially a house hacker, right, could buy it at more of an elevated price, potentially. But at the end of the day, it's always going to be a rental. They're ugly. It's a concrete stucco building, flat roof, totally out of the norm of the area. Just a block, 2 houses to the west of it. Like, you're in a really nice neighborhood where things sell for 800 plus.
Okay.
But this isn't it. So the deal
Right.
on this one is it's a 2-1 and a 3-1. Okay. So current rental rates are junk. Me going into it thinking, hey, 125 to 150,000 to get this thing flip kind of ready, right?
Okay.
But what's that number rental rate wise? Is that 100? It's still, do you just do paint and carpet on the whole thing, or do you replace the 60-year-old cabinets and countertops and all that junk, right? So what I was seeing, and I resort back to Rentometer as kind of a first source, and then just kind of double check it through Craigslist and Zillow's estimate and stuff like that. And seeing in this area, Wheat Ridge, the 2-bedroom, maybe $1,700 a month, right? And the 3-bedroom, I don't know, it doesn't make sense to go Section 8 on the 3-bed to push it maybe closer to that $2,300 a month, right? So you're collecting $4,000 a month between the 2 units, right?
Yeah.
So then where does that bring us, at what makes that a good rental deal in Denver, right? Is that a 550 purchase price, right? If it's rental ready, does that make it a deal at it's north of a 6 cap, I think, at like 5.25 to 550, if I'm not mistaken, with 25% down. How do those what is with interest rates being north of 7%, right? It's like, do you have to beat that on a cap rate today? to have it make sense to offset the interest rates. And that's where I know, your world is more appropriate than my world.
Well, yeah. So, I'm just running my calculator here at 550, 25% down, 30-year fixed at 7.5. Do you happen to know the taxes?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I can find that out.
I'm going to put probably 2,200 a year in taxes, somewhere around there.
Yep.
Insurance is a doozy, right? I'm going to pull out a number. This is going to make you pucker, but I'm going to say 4,000 a year.
Yeah.
Now I have this sea of insurance guys. Insurance guys are always marketing to lenders, right?
Yep.
So I pick their brain all the time. And I think, you can look at Florida and say, oh my God, Florida has just exploded in terms of their insurance pricing. And you can see why, right? They got hurricanes, they've got sinkholes, they got all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
But this wave of incredibly high insurance premiums is here. So I'm going to slap it with $4,000. It might not be $4,000 today. It might be a little less, but I bet it's hitting $4,000 within the next 12 to 24 months. Okay. Yeah. So you're looking at a 30-year fix with 25% down. You're looking at 3,400 PITI, right?
Yeah.
As your monthly payment. So you got what, 2,300. So you got $4,000 gross. After management and all that, it's a break-even deal at 25% down, right?
Yeah.
Just a quick sniff test. Good for a house hacker. Good for a first-time house hacker. Good for your FHA house hacker who wants 3.5% down. Their interest rate is going to be lower, but they've got mandatory mortgage insurance, but they just want to get in the game, right? And so that would be the ideal buyer, I think. That would be the optimal buyer in terms of an investor perspective and a seller perspective. Would you agree?
Yeah, totally. Because then there's the buyer's eyes, right? And this is where we got to almost take off our, investor hats and then look at the reality that in the market right now, duplexes south of 600,000. There's two, like in Denver Metro, So then there's that house hacker, that person that wants a deal or something, and they're looking out there, and there's no deals to be had, so to speak.
Yeah. The other buyer, and this is going to sound harsh, but this is a reality. This is a sickness that we see people have. I call it 1031 derangement syndrome, where an investor just cannot stomach paying capital gains, and to the point where they're willing to 1031 into a less than ideal deal, right?
Yep.
Dare I say a crappy investment.
Yep.
But there's plenty of people with 1031 derangement syndrome. So if you wanted to just do a flip deal here, there's somebody who just can't stomach paying Uncle Sam and might buy it at a premium or something close to a premium. So I think as a seller, like if you're flipping this, those are your two ideal buyers, right? An FHA, first-time house hacker, or somebody with 1031 derangement syndrome. Or if you're now let's explore a little more. What's the seller's equity position, and would they have interest in an owner carry?
Yeah, so it's very small notes on these, right? They were bought 15-ish years ago. He bought the cheapest stuff you could on the market at the time. I think he paid $70,000 for this. And I think it's still the original note on it. No refis on it. No nothing. They have not been wildly successful for him. Management issues, doesn't use email, but he's not much older than us, right? So you're like, okay, all right. And, he bought a duplex in Sterling and Cheyenne too. Like, so it's a little bit of an interesting character that owns it. Owner carry, I haven't gone over that with him, but that's a potential, right? To and we've tried to pencil some of those deals together, but man, they're tough in the Denver market, but maybe that's where the Sterling Cheyenne stuff, works a little bit better from what we've seen so far. So it's an option. I'll have opened that door to him. When I was talking to him about numbers, I mean, my flip number is honestly, if in north of 100,000, even at a 550 sales price, we got to be a buyer at 340.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
and he's gonna balk at that most likely. He's gonna. So I saw on Zillow, right? I mean, how many? Side note: how many times do you hear "I saw on Zillow"
Yeah,
in a month? Like 1,000 times. You must
yeah,
hear it a boatload.
totally. You
Um,
know? Oh God, yeah. Yeah, totally. But I mean, and that's where we talk to them about, hey, this is where our cash offer is. Why don't, or just let me list it. I think we could probably list it for 400, right now and get a quick buyer on the MLS, and you're going to net 370 or more. Or we'll do the work to fix it up for you, flip it for you, put it on the market. But he doesn't want to go through those deals, right? We offer that to everybody. 90% of people go the cash route at the end of the day, even though
yeah,
there's another 30, 40, 50 grand sitting on the table for them because they've hit their point and they're reaching out now where they're done. They're broken, right?
right.
And they just want the path of least resistance with the most amount of money. But those two don't often meet together without someone feeding you a line of shit. Um,
Amen. I mean, those two are not. Those two are mutually exclusive. The
yeah,
path of least resistance and maximizing profits,
yeah,
like that doesn't exist
exactly.
in this universe.
Yep.
I think it would behoove you to consider pitching owner carry
Yeah.
to these deals and turning them into rentals. Um, the whole trick with owner carry is explaining it. And I've been lending for a decade, and still explaining owner carry is a challenge to me. And I've got plenty of reps of explaining notes and investing and all that.
Yep.
So I would agree it's an uphill battle. You've got an uphill battle selling your co-flip thing. Like you said, 90% of the people you talk to just want the cash. They'll take the lower amount of cash and they just want out. With these high interest rates, there's an opportunity to do wrap mortgages. We could talk about that, but I think the long story short, you could take out his first position loan,
Yep.
right? So let's say he owes 50 grand, right? All right, you take out that 50, you turn him into the lender. He can get a higher price for his property, and then he gets a payment, and you can slap on a prepay penalty on there, so he knows he's going to get a payment for, let's say, 3 years. Or you could also slap a balloon on there to say, hey, you're out of this deal in 3 years, or 5 years, or you figure out what they want. And if you can articulate and teach them the benefits of this, there's obviously tax benefits. You and I know we have to be very careful when we're talking tax benefits because we're not tax experts, but it's also like, there's some, oh, duh, if you get a $500,000 in 1 year versus you get, let's say $50,000 in interest payments a year for 5 years, there might be a different tax treatment, right?
100%. Yep. Gotcha.
So,
anyway. So yeah, I mean, what would, in your opinion, what then makes that, what number makes that a rental deal in today's market in Denver?
In today's market, and I would call this, this isn't Denver proper. This isn't Denver prime time. You're right. It is a few blocks away from some prime time. You're right. It's close to 36, which is a direct access to Boulder. Obviously, a direct access essentially to Denver. So it's got access, but the product you're talking about, there's nothing sexy about it. There's nothing premium about it. I would hope, my first time investors, I'd hope they'd get, let's just start at the basics. I'd hope they get 3 to 5% cash on cash. And if they got it, and that's what I'd hope. And then if they got 3, I'd be like, hey, for this market, for where everything's at, 3% is good. The days of getting double-digit cash on cash are gone, and they're nowhere in sight. They might as well be a million miles away. They're a decade away. Who knows how far away? But 3%, especially for a house hacker, or just a house hacker that could break even, where you have a tenant paying your mortgage. And then, so that's where I'd start in terms of just your absolute basics. Now, do we want to talk caps? Do we want to talk appreciation? Do we want to throw it into the fancy spreadsheet and calculate the tax benefits? Somebody who's buying this isn't probably going that deep. Now, if they're just trying to grow their portfolio and they got the stomach for these distant markets, right? These second tier, dare I say, third tier markets like Sterling and Cheyenne. Again, those are going to be harder to move. So to put a Denver deal in that package sweetens the package and raises the stock of Sterling and Cheyenne, obviously lowers the stock of Denver, but Denver adds a lot of shine. And, there's plenty of people that want to pick up 3. Again, another owner carry opportunity that if articulated well, if you can educate the seller well, it could be a win-win-win across the board. I don't know. I don't have the magic sauce for that. We've talked, we're both YouTubers, young budding YouTubers. There's a hyper successful YouTuber, Pace Morby, who could articulate this deal to the seller probably pretty darn well. But I think he's just going through such volume, and his team's going through such volume that I'd be interested to know their conversion percentage on any sort of wrap or mortgage assumption or owner carry. I bet it's in the single digits. I bet they talk to 1,000 people to get a dozen to do it. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat with that. We even paid to have wrap like verbiage and contracts and everything done up. Like we spent the money on the lawyers to have it done legitimately. And, until you get into it, really start analyzing the deals, like if they owe too much, it doesn't work. If they don't owe enough, it doesn't work. It's like you got to have these exact numbers. And then in the Denver market, like it's an appreciation market for the most part, right? This isn't the middle of Ohio, where you're getting, $1,000 for every 100,000 you spend on a mortgage. Like that's never existed. And I've been in this since 2010,
Yeah.
And so it's kept me from going, because you hear about these things and what makes it right. And then you get to the reality of it and you're like, wait, all these deals suck on paper, like for the most part. But then you look 5 years down the road and you're like, but now he's a millionaire and I'm not, because he took those chances. Right. And so, I think you're right. It's just articulating that to somebody is a challenge. We've found it doesn't make the most sense. Most people who are in that boat to sell are thinking about the next $5,000, $10,000, and not 5 to 10 grand over a year, right? Or 2 years or 3 years. Like $100 bill today on the ground is more attractive than $1,000 in 2 weeks. Like that's just kind of the nature of motivated sellers, right?
Yeah.
And so the Sterling and Cheyenne ones are actually pretty interesting. And I almost wonder if the Burr strategy can even be a thing, because they're different sort of stable markets, I want to say it that way, right? Because I think we're going to have a 10% adjustment from now until January. That's my take on the market for whatever it is. My crystal ball, we always go down by 5 to 7%. I think we're a little bit more extreme because lack of buyers. I think something similar to last year almost happens, right? Not quite as much, but close, just because of what I see out there and how desperate sellers get when they're ready to sell. But these ones, and the one in Sterling, $750 aside is probably it's a 2-1, 2-1 on both sides. And so those I'm running basically on the 1-to-1 ratio of like, all right, if we can get $750 aside, and one of my buddies just said, that's probably pretty cheap. $850 to $900 is probably more likely if they're in decent rental ready shape. Finding good tenants out there can be tough. So I'm like, all right, top of the market is probably 175-ish, for decent rental ready. And looking at the Cheyenne one, but the big question is what does it take to bring it to that 175 mark, right?
Yeah.
25,000 doesn't get you very far. In any property these days, like that's a carpet and paint job for the most part, right?
Right.
And clearing someone's crap out. The one in Cheyenne is a little more interesting because there's actually some high values for duplexes in Cheyenne. I was seeing stuff up into the 300s. in Cheyenne, but purely as a rental play. It's another boxy, weird, shitty looking place. It'll always be a rental. So I resort back to the 1-to-1 kind of rule. And it's a 2-1 on both sides as well. There, I was penciling in, what is it, about 900 a side to 1,000 a side. So I'm like, all right, what's top of the market there? 200,000. So if you assume, 25K for the basic rental ready, not including new kitchens, baths, anything like that, if it's super rough, that puts my purchase prices low, makes it 120 for the Sterling deal and about 140 for the Cheyenne deal. Right.
Yeah.
So, but different markets, right? And that's more of a rental. Those are more rental number markets than fix it up and sell it for a shiny penny,
Yeah, those aren't fixed and sell for a shiny penny markets at all. Let me ask you this, because I'm curious, and because I've gone out of state, out of zone. You obviously have a stout pool of subs and crews in Denver. Yeah. Would you take your crews and send them to Sterling? Would you take your crews? Yeah. And you'd send them to Cheyenne too.
We sent them to Florida recently.
Yeah. Okay.
6 months to finish a new build out for Eric. Like the crews there were just unreliable. So he was going back every other week, dicking around. And he just took his crew out there. And he's like 4 guys, put them up in hotels. And it was cheaper than dicking around with all the subs he didn't know.
Isn't that amazing? So I experienced that exact same thing in Texas, where it was cheaper for me to take my Colorado crews, put them in a nice hotel, swimming pool, all meals, all expenses paid. It was cheaper and more reliable for me to do that than to try to find local vendors.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Okay, well, that confirms it. I'm with you.
Yep.
Well, that's good for you too, because you have such a deep sub pool, vendor pool. You've kept these guys working for over a decade. You've got real teams. Me personally, I've backed off on that. So I don't have crews. All my reliable crews are gone. There's somebody else's crews now. Yep. And so, a normal investor, let's just call me a normal investor. That's what would scare me about Sterling and Cheyenne. And I'd go into Sterling and Cheyenne, for a buy and hold play, and I'd be vetting the 1 or 2 property managers that exist in those small towns and hoping they're worth a darn. And chances, not to be negative Nelly here, but chances are there's not much competition, and chances are they're subpar. They might be amazing, right? I mean, my property managers in Pueblo are the best managers I've ever used ever in investing in 4 states. But that's not because I have some secret sauce of finding them. I just flat out got lucky.
Yeah.
It's like the hiring dilemma. Nobody's an amazing hirer. Some people are great at hiring so many people and then firing quickly.
Yeah.
And, but every good hire I've ever made, luck.
Purely right time, right place. Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat, man. You got to go through dozens of people to find out one. But you know pretty quickly in this business, like through a couple of conversations, unless they're really good at bullshitting, we sniff out people all day, every day. Like that's literally half of our job is just to vet people.
Yeah.
Period. And so, we still make mistakes all the time. It happens, but how quickly can you recover from it? But, I'm just faced with is this worth, is offering this guy, $625,000 for all 3 properties, right? And just putting the big number in front of them sound better than trying to go and one off these properties. But it would be a total roll of the dice for me. And I don't roll like that, but the saying comes up of like, who is it that said it? Warren Buffett or something? Like if your IQ was 30 points lower, you'd be, 300% richer.
Right? Yes. As somebody who suffers from analysis paralysis, yes, you're right. I mean, just a napkin test, just sniffing this out.
Yeah.
I'd offer him 600 grand, owner carry 25% down, something, take out his first positions, get 100 grand in his pocket, and then have him carry the rest for 5 years if he's got the stomach for that. So then you're, and then you get to present the biggest number. Granted, it's on all 3 properties.
Yeah.
You get to show him a big chunk of money in his pocket and paying off that debt. I don't know what the debt positions are, but and then I would hit him low. And because that is, I would call this hairy, right? In my world, this is a hairy deal. But Harry, there's plenty of, plenty of meat on the bone where there's hair, right? So that's my take. If it was a perfect package, an institution would grab it up, right? A small family office would grab it up. I'm not saying a big institution is buying that. I'd say I'd call it a small family office or a small portfolio holder like me. If it was clean, would buy it, but then then they would pay a premium. Nobody's going to pay a premium for this.
No.
Unless they've got the old 1031 derangement syndrome.
Yeah, totally. You need to get on the market to find that buyer, right? So do you buy it? You throw the low number out there, but it's a big number for all 3 properties potentially, and then just turn around, slap them up on the MLS, see what happens. Do you fix them up, get the tenants out of there, fix them up, bring them up to a higher level, put them on the MLS, see what happens? The wholesale route, which I'm not good at. I'll be honest with you. I suck at wholesaling properties. I'm not that guy who can't add value, right? And so the value we can add is either you want this done in 2 weeks, we're your guy. We'll buy it from you, but we'll be honest with you, there's a good chance we'll turn around and put it on the MLS, and we're willing to wait 30 to 60 days for our, small payout. And then the due diligence, I don't know how some of these, investing out of state, that's where you've got more experience than we do, is doing your due diligence on these properties. You get into it and you're like, great, all right, I can buy the one in Sterling and he's good at 120 grand or something silly. But yet the sewer line shot, the roof is shot, other than taking his word for it, they're still expensive items no matter how crappy a house is, or how low valued it is. A furnace is a furnace. A sewer line's a sewer line. Structural is structural. There could very well, heck, we put more work into that than we'd pay for it on a lot of the flips we do in Denver. And that's a weird thing to get my head around.
Well, and you might go out to Sterling or listen, my RV broke down in Fort Morgan.
Yeah.
The overhead thing caved in and I had an emergency visit to Ace Hardware there. Yeah. And I could not believe how high the prices were. I got the last, I had to do this, crazy rig just to hold my RV together so I could limp home. And I think I bought a half thing of PVC pipe, some straps, and a board, to prop this thing up for $150. I couldn't believe the pricing on this stuff, but they had me. So you'll get out there, you'll have your crews out there and they're going to, your material costs most likely will go up. And then obviously if you buy materials here, there's some transport costs, you got to do some predictive, you got to predict what you're going to need. And as you open up a wall or do something, you don't know what you need.
Yeah.
So for me to ever go out of state as an operator again, I go out of state, but I let top tier operators do it for me now. I invest in these funds. But if I ever did that again, you got to get a premium, right? I should say you got to get an extra deal, add some points in your favor for every 100 miles you get away from your home base. Yep. And then, I've said this before too, when you start talking to local subs outside and they see that 303 number, that 720 number, you're a big city boy from Denver. They're going to try their best to hold you upside down and shake you for every penny that's in your pockets.
Yep.
And so you got to pucker up for that, and you got to come in tough, and you got to have your crews, but you can't get your plumber out there in 4 hours notice.
Nope.
You got to use a local plumber. So yeah, I would just ask for a screaming deal in those auxiliary markets. I think I'm being gentle calling them auxiliary markets.
Yeah.
Secondary, second tier, third tier markets. Denver's an easy one to do, right? I bet I bet somebody out there would buy it with a 3% cash on cash metric. That one's easy, but I like where you're going with this, and dude, pitch them owner carry. And if you get them to do owner carry, please tell me how you did it. Cause it's beneficial for everybody. And yet helping people understand that has been a major challenge when I've tried.
Yep. Yeah, totally.
So, well, I hope that helps, man. It's nice to talk to you on a Thursday morning. Anything else we can analyze for this one?
No, there's probably so much stuff that, I'm not even thinking about with these deals, but Section 8 would be the only other thing, that I'm thinking of, and what the rates are to help determine value. But no,
you know how to look up Section 8 on the HUD website, right?
It's been a hot minute. Yeah.
It's my guess is 2,200 to 2,400 for a 3-bed, 2-bath. That'd be my guess. They don't sway all that much from city to city around the Denver area.
Yeah.
And then, do you want to manage it yourself? I would say no. You're too valuable of a human to manage that stuff yourself. You've got bigger fish to fry, and you got, better ways to optimize your time. So who are you going to have manage it? I'd consider Grace Property Management out there.
Yep.
In that area. Shout out to Grace Property Managers. They're legit. And then, hey, you know the deal. You got to vet 100 of these to get one,
yep.
Right? And in this market, you got to vet 500 of these to get one. And it's worth taking the 23 minutes we're into this for. I think it's worth it, and it's fun to look at.
Yeah.
But I guess my parting words on this one is Sterling and Cheyenne got to be screaming deals. Screaming, like low price, owner carry, and he's giving you some bonbons to munch on while you're at the closing, just screaming. So, all right, well, on these podcasts, I like to ask everybody what they're grateful for at the end, right? So there's a lot to be grateful for, even though the market's bonkers. What are you grateful for, my friend?
Oh, I come back to that good old entrepreneurial saying, which is being able to work twice as much for half the amount, right? And working for yourself, and to be able to just wake up and choose what it is that I want to do. I don't feel trapped. I don't feel stuck. I don't feel any of that stuff. And I can talk to who I want to. And of course, there's always the family stuff. Everybody's healthy and happy, and that part of life is good. But the things we choose to do, I'm grateful that I get to wake up and just choose to do this every single morning. And the day that changes is the day that I'll choose to do something else.
Yeah, dude, I love it. And I appreciate that reminder. I've been self-employed the vast majority of my life. I think I've had a job for maybe 3 years of my entire life. I started my first company in 4th grade. So I am quite grateful for that, although I haven't thought about that point in a long time. So I'll tell you, I'm grateful you just brought that up. That's good. As always, I appreciate your time, man. We'll do this again.
Absolutely. It's been great talking to you, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks.